So the next trade that's going on during this time period is going to cause us to go a little bit further north. It's going to actually give us two areas. It's going to give us North America and the English and the Dutch and the French going into North America, but it's also going to get us one of the first steps into Russian empire building and going into Siberia. So, with one demand of one good, we're going to kind of expand into two areas. So, Europe's supply of fur bearing animals was sharply diminished by 1500. So, there was an intense competition for furs in North America. And one of the reasons for this increased demand you want to put down here next to capital A is the little ice age, and I'll explain what that is here in a second. The little ice age may have increased the demand for furs. The little ice age may have increased the demand for furs. So, Little Ice Age, bare bones basic, is it was just a period of global cooling. I shouldn't say just, I mean, it was a fairly significant period of global cooling where the temperatures significantly drop over a longer period of time. You couple that with the fact that we're slowly going through a population increase because this is coming at the end of a severe episode of the plague. So you have more people plus cooling temperatures equals greater demand. And the supply of warm, fuzzy critters in Europe just simply can't compete. However, North America has a lot of land and has a lot of warm, fuzzy creatures. I almost like to refer to them as like, fuzzy gold because they will literally be worth their weight in gold and silver because of the demand. So, also, this is going to be when and where and why we have some of the late comers coming into colonization. The French, the English, and Dutch are going to be key in this episode because they're coming late to the whole colonial party. At this point, the Spanish, especially, and also to a lesser extent, the Portuguese, have taken all the quote unquote good stuff in Central and South America. So, what's left is going to be in North America. And the immediately rewarding and in demand product in North America is going to be the fuzzy gold, is going to be the fur bearing animals. So the French are going to be prominent in the St. Lawrence Valley, Great Lakes, and along the Mississippi. The British traders are going to move into the Hudson Bay region into Canada, and the Dutch are going to move into what is now New York. Now, the trade that is going on here is very different than a lot of the trade that's going to be going on in other areas where the Europeans are going to be going in and just grabbing and taking what they want. The trade here is different. Where here in the North American fur trade, the Europeans usually traded with Indians for furs or skin rather than hunting or trapping the animals themselves. Because let's face it, the indigenous population of North America, modern day United States, and Canada, the First Nations people, they would be doing this anyway. So they know where to do it and how to do it the best. So why not let them go out and get the furs and skins, and then the Europeans just simply wait and pay for them? Because otherwise, the Europeans are going to go out stumbling, not necessarily know where to go, and it's not going to be as profitable. Because there's going to be such a demand, beaver and other furry animals were driven to near extinction. And in fact, you want to put down here next to number 2 underneath capital B that beaver pelts were the most desired. Beaver pelts were the most desired. I mean, it's warm and waterproof. So, why wouldn't you want both of those things? And this trade is also going to be profitable for the indigenous Americans. One, they're going to receive many goods of a real value. And the reason, and look at this another way. You want to put down here next to A, and then I'll kind of explain. This is kind of common sense. But put down next to A underneath number 4, you want to put down it was a fair trade. It was a fair trade. I mean, these furs and skins are just as valuable to the indigenous Americans as they are to the Europeans. So the indigenous Americans are not going to be willing to trade for stupid stuff, something that they need, use, and highly value. So the Europeans have to make sure that this is a fair exchange, that it's going to be, good stuff for good stuff. You're going to have a lot of the Huron chiefs be able to enhance their authority with the control of with the control of European goods. European goods will become valuable. And these chiefs will become, again, like trading middlemen. And they're going to be able to flex their muscles. They're going to be able to get greater amounts of wealth that, again, they're going to be able to turn around and use to enhance their tribes, not only from the Europeans, but also from the other various tribes and peoples that want those European goods as well. However, uh, the indigenous population is going to fall prey to European diseases. You want to put down here next to C underneath number 4, you want to put in parentheses smallpox. Put in parentheses here, smallpox. Again, just like the indigenous populations in Central and South America, there's no large scale farm animals. No large scale farm animals, no diseases that those animals carry, no immunities to those diseases. So the Europeans bring in smallpox, and it's going to be just as devastating to the population in North America as it will be to the population of Central and also South America as well. The other thing, and there's a list of bad stuff going on here, fur trade is also going to generate much higher levels of inter-Indian warfare. Now, you want to put down here next to D, and this is going to be a bigger note, but you have plenty of space to run it over here on the side next to D underneath number 4. You want to put down here, this is for a couple reasons. This is for a couple reasons, and we're going to have 3 reasons, okay? This is for a couple reasons. One, competition. One, competition. European goods are valuable, and there's going to be power in having control over that type of trade. So you're going to have different groups of people, different groups of the indigenous population of North America, or these First Nations people, that are going to try to beat the crap out of each other in order to have control of that European trade. Second, now I'm going to say it and then I'm going to spell it. Put in quotes, morning wars. But spell morning, Mourning. Mourning, wars. We're talking about feeling sad at someone's death, not time of day mourning. Okay? And then continue on with that note. Mourning wars to get captives, to replenish societies, devastated by disease. Mourning wars to get captives, to replenish societies, devastated by disease. So, just like in Central and South America, these European diseases are going to destroy the majority of the indigenous populations of North America. So, in response to this, in an effort to try to plump up their numbers again, they will go and they will invade neighboring communities and, for lack of a better idea, kidnap women and children, bring them back to their own villages to improve their populations. The third reason, they also had to take sides. They also had to take sides in the British and French rivalry, in the British and French rivalry for North America. Now, there's some other consequences here to the Europeans coming into North America. One, the Native Americans are going to become dependent upon European trade goods. Like we have iron tools, cooking pots, gunpowder, weapons, European textiles. As a result, and this is the bad news, as a result, many traditional crafts are going to be lost because the European goods are going to be more desired. So people are going to buy and trade for these goods rather than make these goods for themselves. On top of this, again, just like we heard before and what already happened in Europe, many animal species are going to be depleted through overhunting. Because these animal species are going to be so desired, the indigenous hunters are going to go out and they're going to attempt to fulfill that desire because they want the European goods, because they want the European money. We also have the deeply destructive power of alcohol on Indian societies. I mean, this is going to be a long-term game changer. Alcohol comes in and it will ravage and actually continues to ravage Native American societies. There's also some implications for the fur trade on Native American women. One, many Native American women married European traders, facilitating cross-cultural exchange. Now, this is not going to be new. You want to put down here next to A underneath number 6, put it right here, that we saw this in Spanish America. We saw this in Spanish America, and we'll see this in colonial India, and we'll see this in colonial India. Now, there will be some opportunities arise for women in the production of wild rice and also maple syrup, so they will be able to participate in the trade and gather some wealth for themselves. Now, with the Russian fur trade is going to be a big game changer. In fact, the profits for the fur trade were the chief incentive for Russian expansion. In fact, you want to go ahead and put a star there by number 1 because this is going to be why the Russians go into Siberia. I mean, there really isn't anything else that the Russians find profitable or useful within Siberia. And there's going to be a lot of similarities between what goes on here with Russian expansion into Siberia and what went on with the European expansion into North America at about the same time. One, it's going to have a similar toll on native Siberians that it had on the Indians. In fact, you want to put down here next to number 2 that you want to put down here that the Siberians also suffered from diseases. The Siberians also suffered from diseases. So even though Siberia is attached to Russia, the thing is, because of its remoteness, because of its climate, there's not or there wasn't a lot of interaction between themselves and the Russians until we get to the fur trade. Once the fur trade happens and you have all of these Russians flooding in order to get this Siberian fuzzy gold with these fur bearing creatures, all of a sudden there's more Russians, there's more diseases, and the Siberians are just going to succumb to those diseases in the same way that the indigenous population of the Americas will here as well. We also are going to have a similar dependence on Russian goods. I mean, just like the Western European goods, the Russian goods are going to be highly desired by the Siberians. And because they are so incredibly desired, we see, just like in North America, the depletion of the fur bearing animal populations here as well. Now, there are some differences. And one of them is going to be that the Russians didn't have competition. So they force the Siberians to provide fur instead of negotiating commercial agreements. In other words, and you want to put down here next to number 3, you want to put down, please, that the Siberians had to pay a tax. The Siberians had to pay a tax payable only in furs. Siberians had to pay a tax payable only in furs. The other problem with the fur trade, because it ends up never being quite as profitable as the fur trade in North America, is because unlike where in North America the Europeans come in and they just have the Native Americans go off and, kill the fur-bearing animals and then they trade for those pelts. Here in Russia, private Russian hunters and trappers are going to compete directly with the Siberians. So you have the Siberians paying a tax, but then you also have the Russians going in and hunting and trapping on their own. So it ends up not being necessarily as profitable, but it's going to be just as damaging, if not twice as damaging, on the population of the fur bearing animals because you have two groups kind of coming at them.